So welcome everyone. I'm happy to be presenting some new research. As Hal mentioned, this is based on a survey that we did in conjunction with the National Association of Realtors. Last week we presented some of the broad findings from that survey. Today I'm going to be focusing in on sort of one small section of the survey and what we did about it, and that's the 4 types. So I'm going to start out by giving some background on the 4 types. And this originally was developed by Roger Geller, the City of Portland's bicycle transportation coordinator. He developed this typology several years ago, originally to sort of help understand population in Portland and to help guide some of the planning efforts in terms of bicycling in Portland. And he came up with these 4 types: the strong and fearless, enthused and confident, interested but concerned, and no way, no how, based on his experience and other work and research and talking with people, getting feedback, etc. And he also came up with these estimates of what he thought the share of the population in Portland, the city of Portland, how it might be distributed between these types. Now this typology, if we were in person, I might ask people to raise their hands how many of you have heard of this before, because what we have found is, though it was first developed in Portland, when we look through the literature and through bicycle planning going on in different cities in the U.S. and beyond, we're seeing this typology pop up all over the place. I see it presented in all sorts of different contexts. And so it definitely resonates with people who are planning to try to increase bicycling for transportation. And what Roger has discussed and focused on, and what you see, for example, in the city of Portland efforts, is really focused on interested but concerned. That is sort of a target market if we really want to expand bicycling for transportation. And so this typology sort of piqued my interest, and I decided to dig into it a bit more and see if we could collect some data to figure out,
Jennifer?
does this, yes.
Jennifer, this is How. Sorry to interrupt, but the audio is breaking up a little bit for folks. So I don't know if you can check your mic to make sure everything is tightly plugged in.
I think it is. Is that any better? We weren't having a problem before.
Right. So it's just breaking up a little bit. So I don't know if you want to move the mic so it's closer to your mouth. Or...
is that any better?
That's better.
Okay. Sorry about that, folks.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you. So what I wanted to do with my research was to collect some data to actually see how well the typology might work, and to see if that distribution that Roger estimated based on his years of experience, if that distribution was somewhat accurate. So before I dig into the findings, we're going to talk a little bit more about this actual typology and how it was originally defined. So there's a good document that Roger authored, available on the City of Portland's website, where he describes the whole typology and some of the evidence and sources that he drew from to come up with this. And so what I've done in my research is taken that document, really looked at exactly what he meant in defining these 4 types. And so what I want to show you are some of the language that's used to describe these. First of all, you have the strong and fearless. And a key characteristic of that they will ride in Portland regardless of roadway conditions. And again, keep in mind, this was originally developed for the City of Portland, but in theory could apply anywhere. The enthused and confident, some of the key quotes to describe this group include that they're comfortable sharing the roadway with automotive traffic, but they prefer to do so operating on their own facilities. So they appreciate bicycle lanes and bicycle boulevards. They're attracted to cycling in Portland by its bike network and supporting infrastructure. And Roger was estimating that perhaps 60% of this group may now ride regularly for transportation. As we move on, the interested but concerned, some of the key characteristics are that they're curious about bicycling, they like riding a bicycle, but they're afraid to ride, and very few of these people ride bicycles. Current infrastructure is not suitable or is not enticing them to ride. And then the no way, no how he describes as not interested in bicycling at all for reasons of topography, inability, or simply a complete and utter lack of interest. Now, one key thing that Roger brings out, and I want to emphasize as well, is that the separation between these four broad groups is not generally clear-cut. There's likely quite a bit of blurring. Some people may cross over time. They may go between groups. They may not neatly fit into one type or the other. And I also want to emphasize that as I've tried to take this typology and research it and dig into more, my careful reading of it is that these types are defined primarily by people's comfort level bicycling in different environments. And that's the starting point of it. It's not based on their current bicycling behavior. There's a lot of other research out there that tries to put into different typologies in terms of cycling, people who do cycle, who don't cycle, who cycle only for recreation or only for transportation, things like that. The thing to keep in mind here is we're starting not from people's current behavior, but from their comfort level bicycling in different environments. So with that in mind, I just want to touch briefly on some earlier research that we did on this. So in 2011, we did a random phone survey of about 900 adults in the Portland region. And using several questions from that survey, we tried to assign people to types based on their comfort level, stated comfort level, bicycling in different environments, and their interest in bicycling more. Are we still having some audio problems? I wonder if let me know if I should phone in instead.
So it's the internet connection for some reason. You are breaking a little bit in and out, but it seems to be stabilizing a bit more now. But I know you're connected to the Ethernet, so I'm not sure what we can do about the Ethernet.
Okay. So the phone survey that we did back in 2011 in Portland, we were able to assign people to the different, and you can see there the distribution. And overall for the whole region, at that point in time, we estimated about 4% of the people were in the strong and fearless category, 9% enthused and confident, 56% interested but concerned, and 31% no way, no how. And so pretty close to what Roger had estimated. And again, I don't want to focus too much on the exact percentages, but sort of the broads. Now, if you want to see more about what we did in that work in Portland, there is an archive of a seminar that I did online at that link in an article in Transportation Research Record that documents that. So obviously that was just for Portland, and I was curious to see what would happen if we looked in other places or nationally. And so we had this opportunity to do a survey with the National Association of Realtors, funding from them and also NITC. And this was a survey that, if you listened to last week's webinar, it covered a broad range of transportation and housing issues. And so the questions and into bicycling and the typology was just one section of surveys. It doesn't go, but it gave us some data to use. The sample included the 50 largest metropolitan statistical areas in the U.S., in large metro areas, but that does include the sort of core areas, but also the suburbs that are part of those MSAs. The survey was conducted in mid-May, and we used 2 sampling frames. We surveyed 1,000 people over the phone, both landline and wireless, and we surveyed 2,000 people online via a sample developed by YouGov. And we did some weighting so that the respondents better match the actual population. To visually sort of emphasize where we're drawing from, these are the 50 largest metro areas in the U.S., so this is where our sample comes from, so keep that in mind. And then this is showing sort of some of the demographics from our sample compared to the American Community Census data from those same 50. And we did a job of matching some of the key demographic characteristics of the population. Not perfect, but I would say it's pretty close. So now I want to jump into the process that we use to take our survey data and assign all of our respondents to one of those types. So the first part of the process is looking at that level of comfort. And so that's based on the respondent's stated level of comfort bicycling on non-residential streets with and without bike lanes. And I'll show you on the next slide exactly what that is. And then the second part is about their interest in bicycling more, because in particular that interested but concerned category interest is important. And then you'll see we did do a slight adjustment based on actual cycling behavior, which I'll explain. So the first part, level of comfort. We had a question on what you see here is sort of the script from the phone survey version. I'm going to read you a list of places you could ride a bike. For each place, tell me how comfortable you would feel biking on a scale of 1 to 4. 1 meaning very uncomfortable and 4 meaning very comfortable. And we gave several options and places where people may ride a bike, including a path or trail separate from the street, a major urban or suburban street with 4 lanes, on-street parking, traffic speeds of 30 to 35 miles an hour, and no bike lane. Then that same scenario, but what if a striped bike lane was added? Now these are the 3 parts of this question that were used for the typology. I'll show you some more things later on that you asked about. So what we did is looked first at that question on level of comfort. So people who said that they feel very comfortable riding on residential street with bike lanes, we put them in the enthused and confident category. Then I'm going to skip to the bottom end. People who felt very uncomfortable path or separate from the street, or if they said that they were physically unable to ride a bicycle or don't know how to ride a bicycle, we put them into the no way, no how category. And that leaves a large group of people that at first we're assigning to the interested but concerned. And those are people who are less than very comfortable on that non-residential street with or without a lane. So they rated it a 3 or less in terms of their comfort level. So then the next part has to do with the interest in bicycling. So we had a question, please tell me, strongly disagree to a strongly agree scale. There are several questions, but one of them was, I would like to travel by bike more than I do now. And I will also note that the wording on these questions is the same as we used on the Portland survey in 2011. So then we used that, you can see in this area, to split people between the interested but concerned and the no way, no how. So if they strongly disagreed, that wanted to ride a bike more, we put them into the no way, no how, and everyone else was left in that interested but concerned category. Now, when we look at this, though, we did notice that of the people that we originally assigned to the no way, no how category, there were some, not very many, 80 out of our 3,000 respondents who actually had stated that they had ridden a bike in the past 30 days. So we took those 80 people and we reassigned them to the interested but concerned. Now clearly showing you how this is done, it's a fairly simple process. It's not necessarily perfect. There's obviously a lot of nuances to people's responses and how they interpret questions. But this is how we did it with these survey data. This is what happens when we use that and assign all of the 3,000 respondents category if they answered enough of the questions. Nationally in these metro areas, that ended up with 7% in the strong, 5% enthused and confident, 51% interested but concerned, and 37% no way, no how. Now, what happens when I share this with people, I haven't shared it a whole lot yet, but in discussions, people often first focus in on that, wow, 7% strong and fearless. And what I want to emphasize is really to not pay too much attention to that group in particular and put too much weight on the exact numbers. This is a survey, there's a margin of error involved, there's other limitations. I would look maybe more broadly at those first two groups represent an estimated perhaps around 12% of the population, which was actually similar to the Portland regional survey. And then you see the interested but concerned. So
Jennifer?
One of the yes.
Jennifer, this is House. Sorry to interrupt, but it sounds like we are still having some sound issues, and
Okay.
It might be good for you to call in. Apologies to everybody who's tuning in. She needs to call in on her phone. That way, hopefully the audio doesn't break up, and we'll be able to hear her presentation more clearly through the phone connection. So we're just going to pause for about a minute for her to call in on her phone, and then she will continue with her presentation.
Okay, sorry, I got to find the phone number. How? Unless you have it, or someone can dial in for me.
So for those who are waiting, this may be a good time to type in your questions if you have any questions based on what Jennifer has presented right now. And as always, in your control panel, there is a questions pane that you can enter in that information. So.
Okay, I am back, and sorry for that pause. Hopefully the speakerphone is going to work better, and someone will let me know if it's not. Okay, so continuing on, also sort of the differences between what we found nationally and what we found in Portland, even though really they are, I would say, fairly small. We would expect some differences. I mean, Portland, particularly within the city of Portland, is a bit different than other metro areas, and we would expect some differences. And then also a key thing is that we used sort of an abbreviated method on this national survey. We were more constrained in terms of the number of questions we asked. So we based the comfort level assignment simply on those single questions. Now, on our Portland survey, we had more time, and we had 3 questions where we asked comfort level in different types of streets with and without bike lanes. And so there's probably more stability in the Portland results, and particularly for that strong and fearless group. But what I want to emphasize, more importantly, is sort of not focus on those exact numbers, but what I want to do is dig in more as to who are those people, what might get them to bicycle, etc. So who are they? I'm going to go through some demographic slides. First of all, looking at gender. And the way I have done these graphs, the next few graphs, is that this is showing, for example, the distribution of women between the 4 types. So 6% of women are in strong and fearless category, 3% enthused and confident, 47% interested but concerned, and 44% no way, no how. And again, rather than focusing on differences of maybe 2 percentage points, a key thing here to focus in on is that women are much more likely to be in that no way, no how category than any of the other categories. And when I look at the data further, a lot of that is that the women were more likely to say that they are physically unable to ride a bicycle or do not know how to ride a bicycle. And that actually was true in all of our age groups. So it wasn't just that our older adults in the survey tend to be women and that was skewing the results. It was actually at every generation the women were more likely, though the biggest gap was in that oldest generation. There's more women in that group and they're more likely to say that they're physically unable to ride. And speaking of age, this shows the age distribution, which is not surprising in a U.S. context where we don't necessarily see a lot of older adults riding bicycles on a regular basis. So you can see that as people age, they are more likely to be in the no way, no how group and really being pulled out of that interested but concerned group, and to some extent perhaps the strong and fearless group too. Looking at income, we see some small differences, and again in particular sort of trade-offs between the interested but concerned and the no way, no how, with the higher income respondents a bit more likely to be in the interested but concerned, and then sort of an opposite effect in the no way, no how. And again, some of that is likely due to age distribution and links between age and income, particularly after people are stop working. With respect to race and ethnicity, and this is something I have not been able to look into with our Portland data, because of the lack of diversity in Portland, our samples have never been able to allow me to dig into different ethnic or racial groups. We can do that with this large national sample, at least for some groups, and you can see some differences. In this case, it's the Asian and Hispanic Mexican populations that seem to be ending up, more of them in the interested but concerned and fewer of them in the no way, no how category. And I do suspect that underlying that is age, is driving some of those differences. Okay, so how much do these people actually bike? Because that's one of the first things that we're interested in. And perhaps surprisingly is that there aren't as many differences in whether or not these people bike between at least the three types as you might expect. So we had a question on the survey, was in the past 30 days, how many days did you ride a bicycle? And then we followed up that question with, were any of those rides for, and then we asked a series of things like commuting, errands, going to transit, things like that, and then also just for exercise. So what I'm showing here is the percent within each group and how they are distributed. So what you're seeing here is, for example, even amongst the strong and fearless, 64% of them did not ride a bike in the past 30 days. 59% of the enthused and confident had not ridden, and 67% of the interested but concerned had not ridden a bike in the past 30 days. I'll remind people that the survey was done in mid-May of this year, so the past 30 days is roughly mid-April to mid-May. So weather should not have been a major problem over that time period. One key difference here is that the interested but concerned were less likely to have biked for transportation in the past 30 days, and that's one thing that distinguished them. You can see that more clearly here, and so what this is showing you, for example, is that of the interested but concerned, only 12% of them said that some of those bike trips in the past 30 days were on their way to or from work. 26% of them said that some of those bike trips were for running errands, shopping, or eating out, and 87% said that some of them were just for exercise. So you can see that across the board, the people who are cycling, they're doing a lot of them are doing it for exercise, not for transportation, but that the strong and fearless and the enthused and confident were more likely to be making some of those bike trips for transportation purposes. We also saw a difference when we look at the average number of days that people biked in the past 30 days. So of the people who did bike, so we've taken out of that large, roughly 60% or so, who did not bike at all, and I'm sorry, my labels have disappeared from the bottom. The enthused and confident, it's an average of 6.7 days out of those 30 if they biked at all. Or actually, sorry, interested but concerned is 6.7. Enthused and confident is the 10.4, and strong and fearless is the 9.7. So the 6.7 for our interested but concerned is significantly different than those, than actually all three groups, obviously different from the no way, no how, but it is also significantly different from the enthused and confident and strong and fearless. So while whether or not people biked at all may not differ between the three types, the purpose for which they're bicycling differs, and the frequency of their bicycling appears to differ. So the question, I mean, one of the whole reasons this typology exists is to help guide planning efforts. If the objective is to get more people riding, the theory is that we can't rely on just the strong and fearless to be increasing our mode share significantly. We need to get a larger group, larger, more diverse population out there riding for transportation. And so what I'll show you now are a few
of the survey responses that may help us figure out how do we get those groups cycling more. So there's a lot of research, including mine and other people's, that shows that people's attitudes have a big influence on whether or not they bike. And so we had some simple questions on there. The yellow bars on here are an agree to disagree on whether or not where they currently live there are bike lanes and paths nearby. So that's their own description of their neighborhood. The red bars is just a statement, I like riding a bike, and the blue bars are agreement with a statement, I like driving. Now what we see here, if we focus in first on sort of the I like riding a bike, the red bars, and particularly looking at the three groups, sort of leaving off the no way, no how, there actually is not a significant difference there between the interested but concerned and those two other groups. So their attitude towards biking, whether or not they like it, is not necessarily a reason that the interested but concerned are not bicycling as much. What is also interesting are the blue bars. And unfortunately, I do apologize, our scale in the original phone survey was that the first response, 1, was strongly agree, and 4 was strongly disagree, which is sort of intuitively opposite of what I think it should be. And so what the blue bars are showing us actually is that the interested but concerned were less likely than the enthused and confident and the strong and fearless to say that they agree that they like driving. And so one interpretation of that could be, you know, there's some optimism that that group might be interested because they don't necessarily like driving quite as much as some of the other groups. And then on the orange bars, the sort of describing the neighborhood, you can see a general pattern that particularly in the no way, no how group, but also to some extent the interested but concerned, they are less likely to agree that there are bike lanes and paths nearby. So some of that may be that their infrastructure and their environment is influencing their level of comfort. It may also be that people who bike more or feel more confident may be noticing those things more. So it is hard to distinguish those things sometimes. We had a few questions asking people who both did and did not bike about some of the barriers that they have to biking, why they either don't bike at all or they don't bike more. And I'm showing you those. And one thing that may surprise people, or perhaps not, is that actually a fairly large share of the population said that they do not have a bike to ride. And you can see there that it's higher in the interested but concerned group. 56% of them said that they do not have a bike to ride, compared to, for example, 46% of the strong and fearless. Now, clearly, whether or not someone has a bike is somewhat dependent on their interest in bicycling, their ability to bike, whether or not they have facilities nearby, destinations, etc. So it's a little hard to disentangle that, but I think it is an important barrier to note. It's not as easy, for example, as someone just to start walking for transportation. And then also here you see some of the barriers that you would expect. People saying that they need a vehicle for other reasons, weather somewhat of a barrier, not huge. And then this set of bars here, the places I need to go to are too far to bike, which really points to our land use patterns being a barrier to bicycling, and that seems particularly true for the interested but concerned. And then, as you might expect, the interested but concerned and the enthused and confident were more likely to say that there's too few bike lanes or trails The strong and fearless were not saying that so much because they feel comfortable without those facilities generally. And then finally, in terms of sort of looking at some of the things that might encourage people to bike more, in those original questions about how comfortable would you feel biking in this environment, I showed you before the questions that we used for the typology. We used the answers to the ones about a path or trail separate from the street. We asked about the major street without a bike lane and the major street with a striped bike lane. We actually had 3 other questions in there that we asked about. And for the purposes of this graph, I'm labeling them in a much more simple manner than was on the survey. We had, for example, we described a quiet residential street where speeds were 20 to 25 miles an hour, and that's this bar here. We then described what I would call and label a bicycle boulevard. We did not use that terminology in the survey. We described that residential street with traffic calming devices that would slow down motor vehicle traffic and reduce the volume of motor vehicle traffic. So we just tried to describe a bike boulevard. And then we also, after asking about the major street without a bike lane and with a striped bike lane, we said, we asked them about what if that bike lane were separated more physically, for example, with a curb or planters or parked cars. So what may be termed a protected bike lane. So with that context, what these graphs are showing you are people's stated comfort levels for those 5 different environments. And the darkest green is the share that said I would feel very comfortable, and the lighter green is the somewhat comfortable. And as you would expect, those strong and fearless sort of across the board are feeling pretty comfortable in all of those environments, no big differences. Similarly, the enthused and confident, I mean, they were defined by being very comfortable with that striped bike lane. And you can see the distribution. They're feeling pretty comfortable in all of those other environments as well. And then at the bottom here, you have the interested but concerned. And so by definition, they do not feel very comfortable in that striped bike lane. That's why they're in that category. But if you look, their comfort levels definitely increase in these different environments. So when you change that striped bike lane to a more protected bike lane, you get 29% feeling very comfortable and 34% feeling somewhat comfortable. So that's a big step up. That quiet residential street, a total of 80% feel either very or somewhat comfortable. That bike boulevard, it goes up a little bit. And again, the path and trail up a little bit as well. So the comfort levels in these types of environments where the cyclist is not interacting with motor vehicle traffic either at all or very much motor vehicle traffic, and if it is there, it's going to be slow, they feel comfortable. So to sort of wrap up some of the key conclusions, I would say that there's some general consistency in what we found in this survey with the metro areas, with what we found in Portland. And again, without focusing on the exact percentages, it does suggest that this overall framework has some merit. Most people fit into one of these categories. It may not be a perfect fit, but I don't think that that's actually the intent. I see this typology more as a planning tool. And in that vein, sort of for planning efforts, I would say that it appears that around a third of the population may be in that no way, no how group, and a plurality, a majority, maybe more in some areas, is in that interested but concerned group. Now, I will note here on that no way, no how group, I have not focused on them. There is a small share of the population in that group who is physically able to ride but does not know how to ride a bicycle. So in theory, they may be a target population. I would just say that that's probably a harder target population to reach than the interested but concerned. The other key thing is to keep in mind that this typology is not based on how much people actually do ride, and it varies how well it currently may predict whether or not a person rides. There does seem to be a relationship to how often people ride and whether or not they're riding for transportation or just for exercise and recreation. And then what I've chosen to focus in on in this work and the previous work in Portland is sort of looking at that big group, the interested but concerned, and look at ways that might affect their behavior. And as I mentioned, you know, a little more of them don't necessarily like driving compared to the other groups, so that might be one note of optimism for convincing people to bike instead of drive, because they do like biking. It's not that they don't like biking. It's really tied to their comfort levels with traffic. And they currently do, if they are biking, it's most likely that they're biking for recreation or exercise, not to work or errands and things like that. And so then the question is, how do you get people who are currently maybe only biking for recreation or exercise to think about bicycling for transportation, particularly because it may be that they are not even biking in their neighborhood for recreation or exercise. They may be taking their bike to other places to ride where they feel comfortable. It's clear, in a sense, by the definitions that infrastructure is sort of key to addressing people's comfort levels, and particularly for this interested but concerned group. And that not having a bike is a barrier, and this is where, for example, bike share programs might play a role as a way to introduce bicycling for transportation to this group. I do want to note, I've mentioned a little bit of this already. I do want to note surveys, of course, have a lot of limitations in terms of sampling, and so just the inherent limitations of when you ask a person a question, exactly how they interpret it and respond. And that this assignment was based on far fewer questions than we did before. So there are some odd results. We do find a small share of the strong and fearless who say that, you know, traffic safety is a reason they don't bike. So we see some anomalies in the data. They're fairly small, but they do exist. And that there's a lot of other barriers and motivations for bicycling that we were not able to address in this survey due to sort of time constraints. And we also, there's more analysis to be done. This is, we've just finished this analysis that I presented today. There's more to be done, including sort of linking it, the responses to the built environment, because we have the zip codes of where these people live. With that, I'm going to open it up to questions via how. I want to, again, acknowledge the funding for the survey data, and Nathan McNeil, who's a researcher who worked with me on this project.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jennifer. That was a great presentation. As expected, we do have a number of questions, and we'll try to get as many answered as possible in the next 15 minutes or so. So the first one we have is regarding Roger Geller and the typology. So did Geller or others create the typology from an actual statistical cluster analysis or by less formal means?
Roger originally less formal, and so if you read his document, he draws on his experience, discussions with people, getting feedback, but it was not, he didn't go out and collect data and do a statistical analysis.
Okay.
That's one reason, that's partly what motivated our work.
So great, now we have more data to support the typology. All right, so I'm at a university. Any thoughts on how this kind of survey applies to the narrow demographic of college students? Might there be studies that just focus on universities? We may be interested in surveying our students similarly to drive our programming.
Yeah, I mean, this certainly these questions could be asked. I think they would work in different environments. You might want to tweak it a little bit. Now, the way we did the questions, the descriptions are very generic. We do not use specific examples of streets or places because we don't want any bias about those particular locations to sort of enter in. And, you know, within our survey, I showed a little bit about age. Definitely that at least the university student population, which tends to be younger, I would expect it to be a bit different. And then again, in a university environment, depending on where it is, you might have very different results depending on the physical environment where people are.
Okay. So the next set of questions, I'm going to group them all together, so because they're pretty specific to just the survey. How was the internet sample drawn, and how was the sample randomized?
Okay, so the internet sample is from a company called YouGov. They have a panel of I think well over 100,000 people throughout the country, and actually they have samples in other countries as well. So they have a very large sample that they draw from for surveys that they do, including this one. And so that's the online sample. There's other research out there that talks about sort of the validity of the YouGov sample. A lot of people are using it for research, and it seems to work fairly well in terms of representing the population. Now, obviously, it's limited to people who are on the internet, and that's another reason why, you know, we also did the phone survey. The phone survey used, I'm going to have to go back to my notes, but I'm pretty sure it used random digit dialing in those, using phone numbers that were based or assumed to be based in those metro areas.
Okay, great. And then is there a breakdown based on urban versus suburban versus rural?
Okay, there are no rural.
Okay.
Zero rural. These are all within, except if there was an errant phone number. So there might be there might be a handful in there that, you know, we sampled them, we thought they were in a metro area, and it turns out they're not. Okay. But right now, I can't tell you within those urban areas how many are sort of in a downtown core versus the more suburban parts. We do have the zip codes. We are about to link that up with GIS data to tell us that. Okay. I would expect that a large share of these are in suburban environments. About 60% of these respondents live in a single-family detached home, if that gives you any indication.
Okay, and then this kind of relates to that. So it doesn't sound like the data are available by metro yet, right? Metro area?
No, and I don't, except for the New York area and the LA area, I do not believe we have a large enough sample in any one metro area to say anything. And I would even be a little concerned if I took just the LA area or the New York area and tried to divide the population up more. I'd be pushing the sample size too far.
Okay, so yep, that answers a couple of the questions about the metro area. So I'm going to move on to some other questions that focus on the results. So it seems like comfort level of bicycling may differ from attitude about bicycling. I may be a very confident rider, but not avid about bicycling, or vice versa. Did the survey gather specific input about this attitude perception of bicycling as valid transportation?
Yeah, unfortunately, no. We were not able to dig any deeper into that attitude. So the only thing we have is sort of that agree to disagree scale on just that simple statement of I like riding a bike. And so unfortunately, no. That's, you know, one of the limits of this survey was a much bigger survey that asked a lot of other things.
Okay. And then do you have any thoughts about how pressures around physical appearance for women, perhaps especially African American women, could prevent commuting to work by bike. This could be especially true for workers who have to appear a certain way but can't shower at work, so it might intersect with income.
Yeah, so this particular survey did not collect enough data to say anything about that, but there's certainly other research out there done by other people. I think Ann Lusk has looked at this issue and perhaps other people. And it's often cited as a barrier for lots of people who work in professions where appearance might be important, and for women in particular. What I would say is that yes, but in some of the research I've done in the other surveys I've done in the Portland area, I don't think that's as big of a barrier as, for example, not feeling safe riding on streets. So if we had safe environments, to me that's the bigger barrier. Obviously those sort of helmet and hair and clothing and etc. may be some barriers, but not as big as some of the other ones. I'll just leave it at that. But it's probably also an area that warrants more research. It's also one, we've been doing research on electric assist bikes, and I think e-bikes are one potential way to address that issue. We have found in some of our work that women in particular are attracted to e-bikes because you don't get as sweaty, you can arrive, you can do a longer commute or a faster commute and arrive at work not being sweaty, not needing a shower, etc.
Okay. So this is relating to the No Way, No How group. So did any of the No Way, No How group report bicycling, or were they not asked? I ask because I recall a significant number of the Portland responders in that category actually reported frequent bicycling, possibly indicating people who are currently bicycling but do not enjoy it and may be seeking to mode shift to automobiles, so the reverse mode shift.
Yeah. So we had, when we did the original putting people into different categories, we had 80 people out of 3,000 that originally would have ended up in the No Way, No How group that did bicycle at least once in the past 30 days. So we moved those people to the interested but concerned. So this sample, none of what I presented you in terms of our No Way, No How people had bicycled. In the Portland sample, I think we may have left some people in who had only biked for recreation. It wasn't, I'd have to pull out our paper. To me, it wasn't a big share of that group, but it does point out, again, this isn't necessarily a perfect process. So I'll stop there.
Okay, great. Okay, so the strong and fearless respondents answered that they do not have a bike to ride, and I think this person had indicated 46%, I believe. How can someone be strong and fearless if they do not have a bike to ride? Does this point to a potential flaw in the typology?
Yeah, what it does is that so the question is, how comfortable would you feel riding? Not how comfortable do you feel riding? So the comfort levels was asked of people, anyone who was physically able to ride a bike. And again, I guess I want to emphasize sort of the typology is more on how comfortable people feel, not what they actually do. There's lots of reasons people don't necessarily have a bike to ride. Maybe they do have a bike, but it doesn't work. Maybe it got stolen. Maybe they don't have one. But what they are telling me is that if they had a bike, they would feel comfortable riding in that environment. But it does raise a question. If someone doesn't have a bike and they say they feel comfortable, would they really feel comfortable? You can definitely question that. But again, I sort of want to emphasize that we're trying to assign people based on their stated comfort levels, not on their actual behavior.
Great. So this is just a general question. What do you recommend we do with this research to increase bicycling in various environments?
Well, I would say with this research and some of the other research we've done, I mean, it definitely points to infrastructure that reduces interactions between bicyclists and motor vehicles. So whether that be a nice connected network of low volume residential streets with perhaps bike boulevards, or protected bike lanes, that those appear to be the facilities that are going to reach a wider share of the population. Now, other research that I've done with longer surveys that focus more on bicycling point to some other reasons. I mean, there's all sorts of, well, this one points to also sort of the role of land use in this. You know, having destinations nearby is pretty important. So I'll stop there given our time.
Okay, so I think I'll just ask a few more questions and then we'll conclude in a few more minutes. The next one is the Asian race seems to rank highest in fearless, confident, and concerned, and consequently lowest in no way. Comments as to why this would be? Anything culturally?
I honestly don't know. It could be cultural. I have not done enough work sort of reading about why that might be, and we didn't dig enough. Now, I think age may be part of this as well, and so I suspect that in our sample, the older population was more likely to be white, for example, just because of immigration patterns, etc. And so some of that may be driven by age. Beyond that, I don't know.
Okay. The trend is that millennials are more interested in urban cycling than the previous generation, although the data shows that Generation X ranked higher in the fearless and confident to ride section, and millennials ranked much, much higher in the concerned group. Shouldn't the youth be more fearless and confident? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah, it is a little surprising. So some of the results that we presented last week more broadly on the survey and behavior, we actually see that the Gen X folks are actually bicycling the most, a little bit more than the millennials. But it's the Gen X group that is doing it more for recreation and exercise, and the millennials are doing it more for transportation. And so it may be that the Gen Xers who are out there cycling, doing long, 50-mile rides, whatever, that they are feeling, a bit more confident. But I'm just speculating there.
Okay. Okay.
But the millennials are living in more urban areas, so they're more likely to be living in an environment where they have to interact with traffic more.
Okay, and I'm going to answer you ask two more questions in the interest of time, and then there are a few more that we may have to answer outside of this webinar. The second to last question is, the interested but concerned category is quite large, over 50%. Is it possible that dividing this category into more discrete categories would be helpful for driving policy and infrastructure changes? And then what would those be?
Yeah, good question. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this webinar is to get some feedback. I mean, this is new stuff, and so these types of questions will prompt me in sort of my next steps of the analysis. Before, we divided the groups up by their current cycling behavior. So the people who hadn't biked at all, the people who biked only for recreation, the people who biked for transportation. Within that interested but concerned, and looked at that. So their current combination of their current behavior and their interest and comfort. So that would be one way to do it. From a marketing standpoint, trying to figure out, what the shifts might be. I think, there would be a number of ways, maybe demographics. I'll think about that more and see what I can.
Okay. And then the last question, does your research recommend a set of specific bikeway facilities to properly accommodate the interested but concerned group?
Well, I would argue that the protected lanes and bike boulevards, well, let's see. If you just look at the comfort levels, those separate paths, bike boulevards, and quiet residential streets is where those people say they're most comfortable, followed by those protected bike lanes. I would say that really in a large urban area, you probably need a combination of those elements. We've definitely found in our research in Portland that in neighborhoods that are relatively flat with a nice, well-connected grid network of quiet residential streets, even without any bike-specific infrastructure, you can get higher levels of cycling if there's destinations nearby. And then when you add something like a bike boulevard to that or a protected lane on a major street, it could increase it even more.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. I know that we went over our time by a few minutes, so I really appreciate everybody sticking with us through the Q&A, which was very informative. So this concludes our webinar, and thank you everyone for joining us today, and thanks again to Jennifer for sharing the results of her work. You can view other professional development offerings on our website at www.nitc.us. This concludes our webinar, and thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.